Good evening, everyone. We are back with yet another founder series session today. And we have Manish Sardana from Craydel sitting out of Africa, joining us for this webinar. Manish, welcome. I am excited to chat and cover your journey today.
Thanks, Naveen. Thanks for hosting me. I mean, I don't know if people know that we go back a long way, in India.
Yeah, yes. So for everyone understanding, right? So me and Manish first met almost 10 years back. In fact, few months back, I was chatting with Manish, and that's where I got an idea. Why not to cover Manish's story, and more interestingly, Africa's story, because Manish comes with a lot of knowledge and he should be able to give us a lot of input in terms of the people, those who are at least trying to recruit from Africa market. So it's going to be Manish's time. I'm going to speak less, more to Manish. So over to you, Manish. Why don't you help everyone to understand what is Craydel first, and then we'll deep dive and cover your story in detail.
Awesome. Thanks, Naveen, and thank you, everyone, and good afternoon from Nairobi. So I think like a couple of clarifications. I think there is a general concept of like Africa. So I'm in Kenya, which is one small part of Africa, which is very different from many other parts of Africa. So Craydel essentially is an online platform that is helping students in sub-Saharan Africa today to search, get matched to, and apply to universities and vocational colleges across the world.
So Manish, you spent a lot of your time at young age in India. Now you are building one of org in Africa. Why don't you help us to understand how all it started, why you started in Africa, and help us to understand more about you?
Let me quickly cover my journey from India to Africa, and then I'll tell you my journey from Africa, where I started and how I ended up in Craydel. So Naveen, we used to work in the same startup. Eventually, I'd spun off my own business in the startup, which I sold eventually, where I worked for a couple of years, and then I left that organization. Eventually, we closed it down. So I was essentially doing nothing in my house. My wife had just gotten pregnant, so I was just helping us, in her period. And then I got a call from my ex-boss in India, because I started my career in advertising, and he called me saying there's an opportunity in Africa. Would you like to join? And I was like, okay, sure. I wasn't doing much. So when I came to Kenya, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. And it just turned out to be a fantastic place, great weather, amazing people, huge opportunities. So one of the things I was speaking to a lot of my friends is that there's a lot of that sort of tech-enabled businesses that have done so well in India. They're mature stages. And there was nothing of that sorts in Africa. I mean, think about it. On the entire continent, we just had one e-commerce business. We had a couple of job sites. There was nothing really happening in education. So, I mean, I always knew there's a significant opportunity, in the region to build tech-enabled businesses. And given my background, in the tech startup scene in India, I mean, this was something I was always waiting to do. But I did spend about 7 years in an organization called WPP, which is the world's largest marketing organization. So I was heading their sub-Saharan Africa business in the digital marketing and technology part. So it took me 7 years to really understand the continent, because my job did allow me to travel the length and breadth of the continent. So I spent a lot of time in different countries, which really allowed me to understand the continent, consumer behavior, so on and so forth, and also understand where the opportunities are, because in my previous role, I was working with businesses in different categories. So I think there's a time that comes when your itch of an entrepreneur comes back to you, and then you think you can't do the job anymore. So I quit a very plush job, which was doing very well for my lifestyle. So I decided to quit. And I think the question was that what am I going to do after I quit? So honestly, I had no idea. I was actually on Google searching for top 10 tech startup ideas for Africa. I had absolutely no clue. So multiple conversations happened in my home, and I think I reflected in my own journey, and looked at opportunities in Africa. And I think education, seemed great, because one of the things which was very, very core to me, and one of the reasons I left my job, was I wanted to do something that could help create real impact on the ground. And you think to yourself that if you left your home country and you're on another continent, you owe it to yourself to do something that creates impact on a large scale. So education quickly came to mind because of my experience in education startup in India, where we were both together. And then I think, within education, I was looking at various subsets of sort of various plays that we can create. And I think higher education seemed like an interesting opportunity. And just to kind of give you a little backstory about, why kind of I got inspired to start Craydel. So just going back in the days in India, I studied economics in my undergraduate from Hansraj College, in Delhi University, did pretty well in my education. And then after I finished my education, I went to my parents and said, like, you wanted me to get this degree. Yes, I've got this degree. What do I do next? And growing up in India, the next thing is to do masters, because it is very important in India for us to be well educated, which typically also means that you have to do a master's. So I also came from a family of kind of economists, and I think economics was like a natural fit for me. So I went on to kind of pass my entrance exam to Delhi School of Economics, where I went. And then I realized that I'm doing this course because it's something that I've seen my family doing. It's something that seems exciting and interesting, but this is not something I wanted to do. And I wanted to build businesses right from a very young age. So in my first semester, I decided to quit that college, which everyone said, you're a big fool because it's not easy to get into Delhi school and you're quitting Delhi school. But I was very clear, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. So eventually kind of I found my way, into the tech startup, ecosystem with Vritti, where I really, really enjoyed myself, for the time I spent there. And I think like cut forward for a future few years, I knew that the future of the world is going to be, written by people who know how to write software. And I think I had missed the bus. I had not studied, coding. So I put my 7-year-old daughter into a coding program in, White Hat Junior. So yeah, they were really exciting with their sales claims and everything. So I put in my, daughter there, and she was kind of like, she was doing well. She's a smart kid. And then a year down the line, I, checked in with her and saying, how's your course going? And she says, Dad, look, I'm doing this because you asked me to do it, but that's not what I want to do. And I said, so what do you want to do? So she opened her drawer and, she showed me some dolls, and she said, like, I love designing clothes for dolls. So I want to be a fashion designer. And I think that's the moment kind of like all came together for me, saying that, I studied a certain education because my parents wanted me to study that. And I'm pushing my daughter to study software because I wanted to do that, not something that she wants to do. And then you start sort of looking around at a macro picture and you realize that, and so then we started talking to students, on the continent. And then one thing we realized that across every single school that we spoke to, 80% of students in their class 12s, just before they're about to graduate from schools, they had absolutely no clue what they wanted to study. Most of the decision making in terms of higher education was still based on a lot of parental biases, societal biases. So you see certain schools where we go where the students want to only do engineering or medicine because they are kind of like the schools where the best students in the continent go, and then they are kind of pushed into doing engineering and computer science and medicine because they are intelligent, so they have to study those courses. Sure. So this entire process of like, how do you make decisions in terms of, so like even before you choose the university where the student recruitment business, is sitting in, I think there's a fundamental problem before that, which no one is really talking about, which is how did he even decide the course? So, yes. So we said, okay, there are kind of like two fundamental problems that we need to solve. Problem number one, before you decide the university, how do you decide what your course is, or what course are you going to apply to? And as I said earlier, a lot of the decision is based on, biases and misinformation. Like how many parents don't know about careers in machine learning and architecture and all of those things, which careers that didn't even exist like a few years ago, right? So we built out a platform, called Craydel Premium for Schools, which essentially helps students use a psychometric assessment to figure out their best ideal career paths. And then they use those, information of their ideal career paths to figure out what's the best, course for them to study in the university. The linkage between your careers and education is extremely poor, not just in Africa, but across the world. I mean, this is the system that we all also brought up in, right? Our families typically decided what we're going to study, or our peer group would influence what we're going to study, right? So we wanted to take kind of bias out of the equation by using technology to help students kind of make more informed and objective decisions. The second problem that we were uncovering was that, sorry.
I'm just jumping and Manish taking time from you. So you absolutely defined who decide career choices in our life pretty well, right? So typically in context, for everyone reference, while Manish is pretty direct and candid, let me tell you, almost 10 years back, Manish was running one of very large company with 400, 500 people in the company where even I was working and I got chance to Manish first. So Manish, we are going to cover your journey maybe in more detail. Let me slice it down so that people understand it better. So before we get into that, right? So if you look from Indian mindset and Indian side, people understand Africa is a continent, but they treat Africa as a country. Why don't you help us to understand more about Africa landscape? How do we see Africa as a continent? How do we kind of, if I'm a director admission marketeer, if I have to go and recruit, how should I be looking this continent?
Okay, fine. So I think let's just start like from a geographical landscape perspective. So essentially you have Africa broadly into two parts. So you have the sub-Saharan Africa, and then you have North Africa. Okay, the North Africa, the Northern Africa is kind of proximity to Europe, which is mostly an Arabic sort of dominated part of the continent. And then you have Sub-Saharan Africa, which has East Africa, Southern Africa, and West Africa. Okay. And I think, I can say this with confidence, having kind of traveled extensively, minus North Africa, that, every single region is very different. So like South Africa or Southern Africa is extremely different from West Africa, very different from East Africa. And now within East Africa also, there are so many differences between different countries. So if you look at Tanzania or Rwanda or Kenya, which are in East Africa, or Sudan, they are very different from each other in terms of, demographic profiles, in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of aspirations and macro trends in those markets, completely different, from each other. So I think like most of the presentations on Africa titled as opportunities in Africa, or in your case, student recruitment in Africa, but it is not simple. I think for us, we are in Kenya now, in Nigeria now. I think like, replicating our model between Kenya and Nigeria completely was futile. We have to build everything grounds up in Nigeria. And what we've kind of learned in terms of Kenya, there's some, common patterns, but fundamentally, I think it's very different user base. For example, Nigeria, the large chunk of the market looking at studying abroad is working professionals. And they have a very small undergraduate opportunity. They have a very large postgraduate opportunity. And the reasons behind why that works is also very different from the way it is in Kenya. So in Nigeria, I think like the macro is, in a very bad shape. The local currency is depreciated massively. Infrastructure is in a very bad stage. So a lot of professionals are looking at higher education as a path to immigration. Sometimes they might not even care what they are studying or what college they are going to, as long as they get a chance to study abroad. I mean, in Kenya, a large number of the population is looking at studying abroad, but now coming back to Kenya because the macro in Kenya is relatively a lot more stable. So the driving forces, the consumer behavior, the way they look at higher education, they're all fundamentally different from. And then, of course, you have different differences like language barriers, like you have within Western Africa, you have Anglophone markets and Francophone markets. So Anglophone markets are markets that were ruled by the Britishers, like India, and the Francophone were the ones that ruled by the French. So the local languages in those countries, French is the predominant language. I mean, so like what we built in terms of like an English, forward website will not work in Northern Africa, it will not work in Francophone markets of Western Africa. So, I mean, also now, if you look at the market structure in terms of study abroad agencies and the global players in the market are also very, very different. So you really need to adapt yourself, when you go to different markets.
Absolutely, right. So
you can't have an African strategy.
No, absolutely. Africa continent covers 54 countries, and like the way you explained, Nigeria is possibly different from Egypt, then different from Kenya to different countries, right? So, and for every country, you have to bottom up possibly build for nitty-gritty. You have to understand what's their need and aspiration. The Kenya might be, as you explained, where the people might want to go abroad but want to come back, versus other country where their whole motto is to go and settle abroad, and so on.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was also reading, Manish, Africa continent is, I guess, one of the largest continent where the youngest population we have, like 60% of, I guess, population is less than 25 years. So there is like, it's moving down. People are aspiring to study and excel in life. But coming back to Craydel, Manish, what is your operating model? What exactly you guys do as a company?
Yeah. So I think like before we kind of jumped onto the Africa conversation, I think I was just trying to explain, like one of the
Yeah.
problems that we're trying to solve, and this problem solution will lead to our operating model, is that kind of use like more advanced psychometric assessments to help students find the right career path and the right courses for them. And the second problem is that how do they find the right university? Now think about it, right? You've seen the study abroad market, right? You've seen how the study abroad agents kind of market operates. So this is how it works, right? You're a student, you are an agent. I go to you and saying, look, Naveen, I want to study computer science and I'm thinking about UK, Australia, Canada. I'm not really sure, which university should I go to? And I think like the answer to that question is extremely complex, given the amount of options and information available for you to be able to answer the question effectively. So 3 problems happen fundamentally in answering that question. Number 1 is what we call the counselor bias. So in a study abroad agent, no matter how big the agent is, eventually you're dealing with a counselor. This counselor typically is someone between 2 to 5 years of experience. If you're lucky, you'll probably get someone with 8 to 10 year experience. Okay. Now this counselor has in their past life sent a lot of students in a certain course in certain universities, which they're very familiar with. So let's say if you're someone like a Plyboard or IDP or Craydel, where we're dealing with 500 plus universities, thousands of university options. So if I ask you, Naveen, for computer science, what is my best option to go to universities? How the hell can you answer that question without having a bias? So typically what happens is that a counselor at their level has a bias of certain universities that they're going to push to the student because those universities are universities that they're familiar with, okay? There is so much information about universities and courses that it is humanly impossible for a counselor to retain that information in their heads. And hence, the bias comes in while advising a student. The second problem is what we call the information processing kind of handicap. So every course in every university has a certain requirement in terms of the grades required for you to be eligible for you to apply for that course. Now think about it. You want to apply for computer science. Now, a certain university might require a certain average grade and a certain grade in math and certain grade in English, certain grade in physics. Another university might require a certain different average grade, but a lower requirement in math, but a higher requirement in physics. And now you keep adding these permutations across thousands of courses, options available to a student. Now, if I tell you that these are my grades, which university am I eligible to apply to? It is humanly impossible to process the amount of data required for you to compute in your head for you to answer this question clearly. So you need a technology intervention that can process all that information. And now multiply that problem when you have different education curriculums. Yeah. So university has given information in terms of the requirements in IGCSE grades, which is, let's say, AAB. And now you're an IB student. How do you convert that requirement from IGCSE grades to IB grades? And then you have multiple curriculums available across different, like India, we have CBSE. In Kenya, we have the KCSE curriculum. In Nigeria, we have a Y curriculum. So every country has their own curriculums, and then you have some common curriculums. So we also had to build a grade conversion model where no matter what the grade requirements of universities, we can convert that grade requirement into your own curriculum's grade requirement. So because of all of that complications in career guidance and the complications in helping students select course universities, technology has to play a significant role in actually properly counseling students. Our fundamental thesis is that the way the study abroad agency business is done today is fundamentally broken. It is completely analog. It is not putting the student first. It is fueled with biases and bad information. And without proper intervention of technology, there is no way in the world you can make career counseling scientific and objective. So we are trying to disrupt the entire career counseling and higher education counseling model using technology. So that's our core business. So we are building the technology infrastructure that can be used to improve the way students search, get matched, and apply to universities. Related to that is another very big philosophical point that I know that our presentation talks about student recruitment, in Africa. We do not consider ourselves a student recruitment business because philosophically, a student recruitment business means that you're recruiting students for the university, which means that your customer is the university and you're getting them students, right? Philosophically, we feel we are working for students, helping them find the best universities that fit their budget, that fit their grades, and fit their requirements and fit their career aspirations. So we always say that agents work for universities, we work for students. So we are not a student recruitment business. We are a business that helps students search, match, and apply to universities, which is a very fundamentally different model, because we are now trying to put the student first by building a model that is technology-led, that is also very transparent. So for example, if you come to a platform, and you can, I mean, compare this yourself, go to any platform, we have every single course listed with their detailed fee structures. We have the scholarships listed openly. No agent will typically talk about scholarships, right? And you know why they won't talk about scholarships? Because every time you offer scholarship to a student, you make less money. So I think we are trying to kind of fundamentally disrupt this ecosystem from the outside.
Very, very interesting.
So our operating model is use technology to help students kind of finalize the universities, and then have a team of counselors that now help you in the actual application process, in the actual visa process. So we have all the human intervention required, but our idea is to kind of empower the students to own their future, for them to make the decisions themselves.
Got it. Makes sense. So Manish, just double clicking on what you spoke, how are you reaching to the student? How exactly the student are discovering your platform? Because you are talking about more on student first kind of platform, where you are empowering students to discover the right and best fit universities versus universities saying, hey, you know what, I will help you to get you the student, which is more biased approach. But in this case, how are you getting the student on your platform?
Yeah, so, when we started the business, we started as a D2C platform. So we essentially built an online discovery platform, and we would typically run digital marketing campaigns, and via SEO and direct traffic, we'll get a lot of traffic, and we'll process those students through the conversion funnel. As of last year, when we started going to schools, we saw a massive opportunity, in the schools space. So what we've done is that we've kind of built a platform, like a SaaS platform for schools, where the school counselors and school students can essentially use the platform on their own. It's a self-service platform to essentially take the assessment and then, do the application to universities on their own. And of course, we have the backend support to kind of help them in the entire process. So currently we have two channels. We have the D2C channel, which is currently becoming smaller for us, and the bigger channel for us is now becoming schools now. So we are in large number of, national schools, international schools, both in Kenya and Nigeria. In fact, we have some of the top schools, on the continent working with us today.
Wow. So if I understood correctly, for everyone reference, you are saying you are partnering with the schools, you are deploying your platform there, and the schools are enabling students to take informed decision through your platform for their kids.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Wow. And that's kind of becoming a barrier for other companies, if I understood correctly.
Absolutely. I think it becomes a massive strategic, mode for us. In the sense that, that these agents keep going to schools to kind of recruit students. But I think given that our platform is, deployed in the school ecosystem, the students are using our platform, engaging with the platform, Craydel becomes a top of mind brand for them. And I think students are also realizing that unlike other agents, you're not pushing them to make choices. We are actually empowering them to make the best choices themselves.
Got it. But from a university point of view, Manish, there are a lot of agents, those who claim that I can get student from Africa or let's say different countries. Now we spoke about African continent for a university. Do you think you are substantially solving a altogether different problem? While I understood that it's more on the counseling side. So what I'm trying to understand, are you different from an agent model or sub-agent model?
Yeah, I think number one, we are fundamentally philosophically different from an agent, because an agent is typically driven by commercial interest and essentially has a limited choice to offer to their students. And they are kind of essentially not counseling students, but pushing students, into universities. Naveen, there is no course in the world for career counseling. And it's really interesting. Think about it. If you want to become a doctor, there's a course for you. If you want to be a teacher, there's a course for you. If you want to be a career counselor, there is no course for you. Like there's no course ever anywhere. Think of this, it's not formal education today. So imagine the job of a career counselor is basis their career advice, a student's eventual career is going to be shaped. And millions of careers today are being shaped in Africa basis what the counselor is telling them. And they are not professionally qualified to actually even do career counseling. So anyways, that's just a side note. So like you understand, like we don't work like agents, we are working for students. So I think like we see that a lot of kind of companies who are trying to kind of enter Africa, the route they take is they essentially go to agents. I think we have like a portfolio of 100, 200, 1,000 universities with us. And if you have students, you can bring the students to us, and then we will process the application. We'll do a revenue share with you. So we'll typically give you 70% or 60%, we keep 30%. So the entire model of outside businesses coming to Africa for student acquisition, is fundamentally based on acquiring agents. Applyboard is an example of that. KC Overseas is a recent example of that. So we have a lot of these companies coming to Africa. And I think we think that's bad. That's a bad model. It allows you to scale fast on the continent. But if the study abroad agent model is broken and it's not student centric, what these companies are doing is they're using technology to perpetuate a broken system. They're in fact scaling a broken system, which is not good for students and for learners. So we feel that we are going for a long-term play. We'll probably scale not as fast as some of these people, but I think in the long term, you're going to win because we are student first. And I think as Jeff Bezos always says, that if you kind of obsess about your customers, eventually you're going to win.
Oh, very interesting. So it's not going to be the Applyboard or KC or someone else. Manish is saying Craydel is going to be the largest company out of Africa who is going to solve ethically and keeping student first at center of it, right? So given the time, right? So I can see a lot of people are putting up the question in Q&A section, and a lot of people are still joining in. I can see the counter going up. So what I will do, Manish, if you allow me, I will handpick some of the questions and we'll try to cover one by one. So let me go and open my Q&A section and can see. So are there specific region in Africa? So it's a name not given by attendee in Africa where there is a lot of opportunity. I'm not sure whether what does it mean. So I'm just giving a pass. If you are still on webinar, please define your question properly so that I can pick and discuss with Manish in detail. So the next question is, what are the courses that students are interested in Africa?
Okay, so let me start with the first question in terms of the market opportunity, in terms of the size of students who are potentially looking to study kind of higher education. I think the big market is Nigeria, and then in South Africa, and then Egypt. These are big markets as well. In terms of courses, I think we have a lot of data around kind of courses. Like in Kenya, we see a massive demand for undergraduate courses, but the mains are business, engineering, nursing. Essentially, we see kind of courses which have kind of more technical job opportunities upfront, are the kind of courses that do well. So computer science, engineering, business, nursing, these are our top courses.
Okay, great. The next one is, how do you handle cultural and linguistic diversity while providing personalized counseling services?
Yeah, so as I said, if you look at the market, there's kind of Anglophone markets and Francophone markets, and then you have Arabic markets. So currently our focus is in Anglophone markets. So in Kenya, Nigeria, the market that we focus is on Anglophone markets. Now you do get students who kind of are not conversant with English and probably want to speak a local language. First of all, you have to go to English because you have to eventually take the IELTS exams and everything for you to get to admissions to university. But in terms of counseling sessions and everything, we have counselors who speak local languages. So in Kenya, we have counselors who speak the local languages here. In Nigeria, we have counselors who speak the local languages there. But essentially, our focus is Anglophone markets for now.
So the next is, are you open to partner with the universities if someone is looking to recruit from Africa or specifically Absolutely. In Nigeria?
Yes, someone essentially, let me not say recruit students from Africa, but someone who wants to serve students in Africa, we are absolutely open to partnerships. So yes, so we have, I think about 300 universities we have direct partnerships with, and we are expanding. It is our mission to kind of expand our university partnership because we want to give more and more options to our students. In India specifically, we have just recently partnered with Symbiosis. That's the first university that we partnered with, and we will continue to partner with more universities in India as well.
Great. So for everyone reference, maybe post this webinar along with video recording, we are going to share Craydel information where you can reach out to them in case you are exploring any kind of partnership, and then you will be able to connect and take your discussion forward. So the next one is, of course, you talked about Applyboard. I can see a question here. Do Craydel also work with agents, though we have covered a little bit like Applyboard?
No, we don't work with agents. So we have a partnerships program. We don't work with study abroad agents. We don't like that model. We want to disrupt that model. So we will not like to work with, organizations that we want to disrupt. unless and until we see an agent, we see who's completely aligned with our value system. But essentially, we do work with partners. So, for example, if you're a coaching center, you're a tuition center which has access to students, or you are IELTS test prep center, we could partner with you. But fundamentally, we are philosophically against working with, unless and until we find someone who's value aligned with us.
So basically, Manish, what you are saying is, on one side, you will work with the students directly, enabling them to choose a right fit university, and on other side, you want to go and partner with the university directly rather than having an agent in between.
Oh, yeah. So essentially, so we work directly with universities. There are some cases where students, so now there are cases where students come to us and they want to work with us and they don't have a university that we are partnered with.
Yeah.
So in that case, we might use the help of not an agent typically, but a platform like QS, for example, or a trusted partner that we have to help them process the application, because we don't want students to go empty-handed from our side. But we don't use agents to acquire students ourselves.
Got it. So, Manish, in that case, just double clicking on that, right? Are you going to partner university country-wise country? How are you actually partnering with the university? You talked about 300 partner as of now, but what's your approach in terms of when you are looking to expand?
So essentially we have like a huge list of universities where we see a lot of demand from Africa. And also we see that these universities are, a well-ranked, well-respected universities. And we also look at, will the university degree be valid in Africa after they finish the course? We also look at how much the university actually helps you in getting career placements after the course is open. So we have our own criteria of, universities we want to go after. And then we have a team of people that essentially connects with those university reps, on LinkedIn, via emails or phone calls. And then we set up calls with them, we do meetings with them, and then we, if everything works well, then we partner with them.
So there is follow-up question on this. Maybe I will pick an answer on that line. So what is your cost structure for Indian university partnering for securing African admission? Maybe this is something you can take it offline once you guys connect it, right? So this is related to the how much do you charge, what's your business model, and so on. So I'm skipping this, but addressing it so that everyone understands it. So the next is, it's more towards incoming student rather than outgoing student. So it's a specific question in terms of the number maybe, but we'll talk about largely at broader level for everyone understanding. The question is, what percentage of students come to Africa, specifically Kenya and Nigeria, for post-graduation from other countries? So rather than percentage, maybe Manish, if you can talk about what kind of experience do you see in terms of incoming student from different countries? Do you have understanding on that side?
So I think we see a lot of kind of intra-Africa opportunity. So like we see a lot of students in Nigeria who go to Ghana to study. We see students in Kenya who go to Uganda to study. We see students from Tanzania who come to Kenya to study. So there's a lot of intra-Africa education, So just to kind of also understand that we just don't focus on universities outside Africa. We also focus on universities within Africa. So we have a lot of respected university partners within Africa as well. For students who cannot afford to go out and still want quality education within Africa, so we have that. Our CTO, John, studied in Uganda. Eba, who is our university partnership manager, is Swedish, but she studied in Kenya, interestingly. I don't have the exact numbers of the number of students who come to Africa from outside Africa to study, but we know that there is a lot of intra-Africa education exchange that happens.
Interesting. So there is one more. Considering the rapidly evolving technology landscape, how do you plan to stay ahead of the curve, maintaining Craydel competitive edge over your competition?
Okay, so what is going to be a technology differentiator, right, for us?
So the question is, how are you going to stay ahead from your competition?
Okay, fine. So I think let's divide this market in two parts, right? There's a traditional analog study abroad market, which essentially doesn't possess technology. So they like to partner with partners like Applyboard or IDP to kind of grow their businesses. So let's just leave that, market away, because that market doesn't have access to technology today. Then we look at, competition like, Applyboard, IDP, KC Overseas or Intake, where they have kind of some bit of technology kind of available to them. So like one big difference that we've seen between us and everyone else is that our entire sort of learner front end is pre-login available. All of everyone else makes this post-login available. So I think that's like a fundamental difference. We don't, worry about giving students access to information without they having to sign up with us or start the process with us. That's one fundamental difference.
Wow.
I think our school's platform is pretty state of the art, especially our application system, because our application system today can work with local African curriculums, which we 100% are sure that no international platform can consume the information from local education curriculums and convert that into eligibility requirements, for international universities. What is the application rejection rate in Africa is? Like if a student from Africa applies to university abroad, just take a guess. What's the rejection rate of applications?
It will be very hard for me to guess about
but take a wild guess. Sorry, I'm going to put you on a spot here.
What you are putting me in.
Yeah, I'm putting you on a spot here.
I don't know, maybe 50-60%.
It's about 80 to 90%.
Wow.
And this includes, the large platforms as well. And one of the reasons is that there's a lot of nuances when it comes to local education systems. And I think our system is, purpose-built for Africa very much, and it can capture nuances of the local education system, but also local requirements, like, for example, gap years, recommendation letters, CVs, etc., all of that.
Lovely.
Yeah. So the third thing is that we're also building our first of its kind visa application platform on top of the application system. So our psychometric assessment that helps students decide courses, combined with our application system, combined with Meritto's CRM, combined with our visa application system, together gives us a very strong edge.
Wow, lovely. So there's
like if you look at applicable to anyone, no one is focused on psychometric assessment or helping students decide. They're saying, let's just push you into universities. That's it.
Okay, great. So it seems very specific to Craydel. I don't know. So maybe you can help us to understand. How's Craydel Cup going? I don't know about the Craydel Cup. Is it working effectively to attract students? So maybe if you want to answer this.
Oh, I'm happy that people are aware of Craydel Cup, back in India. So that's interesting. So Craydel Cup, our kind of fundamental thesis is that we want to help students own the future. And, so one of the things that we want to do with students is not just help them in finding the right university, but also help them become better professionals going in the future. So Craydel Cup, for everyone who doesn't know, is, Kenya's largest, inter-school business pitch competition. So it is like the Shark Tank, for school students, where the prize is worth 50 million shillings, which is about 3.5 crores or something like that, which is fully funded scholarships to a university in Ireland. It is doing very well. We've had more than, so far we have 250 schools teams, registered. We have 100 plus business ideas already submitted already. And, we have more time till the 15th of August. And this final episode, the final part of the contest is going to be telecasted live on the television. And I think it will be really great for us because it has helped us build a lot of student affinity, but also allowed us to enter schools where we were not able to enter in the past. So because of Craydel Cup, we are able to kind of get conversations into schools where we didn't have conversations before. So it's doing really well for us and our partner university.
Great. So we are already done with the 40 minutes, but still I can see more and more questions coming in. So maybe what I will do for everyone reference, we'll post Craydel and possibly we'll check with the Manish if he's open to share his email ID or some ID where you can post question directly to Manish and his team post this webinar and you will be able to get the answer from Manish. Before we kind of wrap, maybe I will take one more question, which is from Srinivas. This seems a follow-up question. Manish, what is your admission cycle? Do you conduct fairs and etc. or your system can minimize or optimize additional cost? Though now I can answer this after 40 minutes. Srinivas, so maybe I'm jumping on behalf of Manish. What I understood is Manish and his team directly work with schools, which he talked about, national and international level. They are giving a platform to schools. They are empowering their counselor so that they can enable students, which definitely means just not about fairs, but they are very, very deeply integrated in schools from where they are getting the students onboarding, which automatically optimize the cost.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do fairs.
To add. I just answered from my 40 minutes learning.
Yeah, we don't do fairs. Yeah, we don't do fairs. I think you figured it out yourself without me saying it. I think the fairs is a really old model. It doesn't help the students at all. It's just a database generation exercise for universities and agents. It does not. So we don't do anything that we don't think helps our students. So we don't do fairs because we don't think a fair helps a student. In fact, a fair is counterintuitive to our philosophy because a fair exposes you to 5 universities that get charmed by some Britishers and Americans, and then you want to apply to those universities. It doesn't allow the students a space to be able to have an unbiased and fair assessment of universities. This study abroad market has not changed at all in the last 50 odd years. It has stayed exactly the same. Nothing has changed, unfortunately. So we see a lot of people still doing fairs. We don't do fairs.
Yeah, so I totally understand. And this is where this question is coming, because even in India, at large set of study abroad companies are doing fairs. Of course, they might be having their side of it. But with this, I want to wrap this. Thank you so much, Manish, for coming online and spending this time. Lovely speaking with you, and would love to chat back again sometime with you and cover maybe a more detailed version in your story over a period of time. I totally appreciate. Thank you, participant, for staying there. And I hope we try to justify last 40 minutes. And as I promised, that we'll be sharing Craydel team IDs or Manish IDs, where you will be able to drop your questions or maybe a partnership request in case you are exploring some kind of partnership with Kenya or Nigeria market now, rather than saying Africa market. And maybe Manish is the guy who is trying to build bottom up a little different direction. Thank you so much, Manish, for your time.
Thanks, Naveen, for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Lovely. Bye-bye.